Good afternoon, Rons. In a very tranquil and civilized manner, we discuss life without Drew Brees and the defeat in the Coliseum. We hope you enjoy and let the clickbait versus Teddy Bridgewater debate begin.
Look at uptown people like yeah. People up in Gretna like yeah. Mid-city folks like yeah. People downtown man yeah.
Who dats? Where you at? We hope you're still right here, all in, emotionally invested with us. And guys, this one was tough this past week, right? I don't think anybody didn't hit this one in the gut. And I'm just going to start this out in honor of Brees. You know, and all that happened, I'm going through and I'm thinking, what would Brees do? He'd go to his Bible. I know we like to separate church and state on this podcast, but we're talking about the saints. And Isaiah 66:9, I will not cause pain without allowing something new to be born, says the Lord. So look, we're going to get all into it tonight, and we're going to look to give you hope about what could be born in this era, this next 6-7 weeks without Brees. We're going to get all into it, but first and foremost, I got to introduce the supporting cast. George, how are we after this tough weekend?
Languished. We are languished, Ron. Firstly, I got my mom to start listening to the podcast to support her son. And the first thing she says, George, you yell too much. You yell too much. So tonight, a point of emphasis will be volume control. I know we're going to get very emotional and heated as we talk Teddy and clickbait and all these fun things.
Be you, Georgie. Be you.
But I can't lose listeners from me yelling in their stereo. But I appreciate that, Jay.
All we've done is gain listeners. Be you.
You're right. All right, but hey, we're languished. We're not lavish. You know, Ron, they always say, what would you do if you got a time machine? I have my answer for you now. I'd go to September 15th and stand right outside the team bus and tell Sean Payton, you cannot get off this team bus tonight. You just need to wave the white flags because last Sunday was bad for business. That was bad mojo, but life must go on. Let's pass it to our main man, Jay. Jay, how you doing, brother man?
I'm doing great. I was born optimistic, but I'm feeling optimistic. And, you know, not easy to feel optimistic after Sunday for many Saints fans. And for me, it just looks a lot different without number 9 out there. And I think you saw that with the whole Saints offense. Looked a lot different without Drew Brees. I think the Saints were in a fog all day. But I'm feeling grateful for all the seasons that Brees gave us before this without a freak injury like that occurred Sunday. You know, all the snaps that he's taken and never to have an injury in his tenure with the Saints. So I immediately felt after watching that game, and I try to appreciate it like a fine meal at a nice restaurant, every bite with Drew Brees. But I felt like after that game that I've taken him for granted, just how special he is, I guess, especially after watching somebody else play. So grateful to have Drew Brees in a Saints uniform, and we'll get into all that later, but doing well.
Damn, Jay, kicking it off with a eulogy already. Stat Ron, did the bar just drown sorrows after the injury, or was there any hope?
I'll tell you what, it was definitely a somber sight over at Public Bar at DuPont Circle, but I don't know about you guys, when y'all were watching the game and Brees runs out second half with the helmet on, and there's a shot of him like hyping up the crowd. When I tell you that the bar, it felt like Bobby Boucher was coming back at halftime to help the Mud Dogs win the Bourbon Bowl. The crowd, I mean, it legit went insane. And then obviously I keep checking Twitter, and you know, it kind of set back into reality once Bridgewater started taking snaps again in the second half, but. Yeah, definitely a somber scene, but, you know, I kind of second Jay's thoughts there. And, you know, after sleeping on it, the 24-hour rule, I kind of gained some optimism after, I feel like I've been, like, listening to all these interviews from local news outlets interviewing all the New Orleans hand specialists, kind of getting the lowdown on the injury and the surgery it's going to be coming up with Brees. So optimistic, and actually I'm excited because I'm making a trip out to Seattle this weekend. So I'll be out there with the 12th man, kind of hopefully be able to size up a little bit and see what Teddy can do.
Yeah, you're right on there, Stat Ron. There's nothing but a just flood of emotions when something like this happens. You just can't help but think long term, think back to the past, get nostalgic. It just overwhelms you a little bit, and you're spot on to it. Monday morning, all the water cooler talk, right? Everybody's a hand specialist all of a sudden. I got my coworkers telling me, "Oh, saw the same thing with Phil Simms. Yeah, Breeze is done, man. Oh yeah, he's just never coming back after that." Then you get in all kinds of mixed reports. So George, isn't that why we had to reach out? We had to get the straight to the source expert opinion. We had to go to a longtime contributor to this show. Isn't that right, George?
Our resident PT for PST, Dr. Simo, is here with us. Simo, how we doing, brother?
Oh, we're doing great, Georgie. I appreciate y'all having me on. Just trying to stay healthy.
Simo, skier's thumb, torn UCL. Everyone in their office, everyone around town is now a doctor and an expert in this injury. But we truly have you here who is the true expert. Now break us down. What is skier's thumb?
All right, so skier's thumb is just another fancy word for pretty much the injury that Drew sustained. The easiest way I'll do it is I like to have people just kind of look at their thumb, so palm down, kind of spreading their hand. If you look kind of at that web space, so the point between like your index finger, your pointer finger, and your thumb, that's pretty much where you had the injury that happened, right? They call it skier's thumb because typically skiers coming down the mountain, especially novice skiers, when they fall, they kind of land on an outstretched hand and they catch that thumb and it kind of hyperextends or bends backwards. And so that inside part of your thumb is where you're going to have the injury. And the specific injury was to the ligament. UCL, you'll hear it called pretty often. It's just ulnar collateral ligament. Most people, I know y'all like to do the sports carryovers, so most people are familiar with it with baseball. And oddly enough, your boy Roethlisberger had this injury this weekend. So there's a UCL at the elbow too. Most people know it as the Tommy John. And that's another one that's pretty significant. So we have one in our thumb too. And that's kind of the injury that Drew sustained and where we're going to have to go in and get some repair on it.
Simo, that's great for the fans that we can get that visual just by looking down. I can already feel the pain and empathize a little bit because that just seems like, man, how does your skin not rip first? But what could we possibly be looking at in terms of grades of tears? I mean, we won't know until they cut them open and determine what the possible severity is. But what could we be preparing for in terms of worst case and best case?
Yeah, so the fact that they're actually doing surgery, we know it's already a grade 3 tear. So typically it's grade 1 through 3 based on the severity of the tearing, meaning how many fibers were torn. When we get to a grade 3, that's typically going to be completely torn through, right? You'll hear synonyms are ruptures. That's what happened to Dez with his Achilles tendon. It kind of just tore right through. They usually don't really consider surgery unless it's completely torn. And you can tell Drew is gone right when he went to grip that ball, right? That joint becomes more unstable. He just can't generate the force. And that's when we're starting to determine what's going on for his surgery. Now, when we're looking at with his surgery, my outlook's actually kind of changed recently. And hopefully some of the information I provide will start to maybe uplift the Whodats a little bit because I know it's been pretty somber the past few days. Like you said, everybody's been kind of, what are they doing? What's the surgery going to be? Is 6 weeks really going to be realistic? And we'll kind of talk about what they're going to do and who he's going to see out in LA as well. So oddly enough, I mean, if he's going to have it torn anywhere, this Dr. Shin, the more I research him, the more he's probably the most appropriate people. When they said 6 weeks originally, even I was like, that seems pretty fast. But what happened was back in 2017, this guy developed a new technique where essentially he's augmenting or adding some more tissue towards that ligament. So he's going to go in, he's going to pretty much drill into the bone. He's going to suture the ligament itself, but he also puts let's just say an extra piece of tape or an extra band on top of it to make it a little bit stronger. And what's great is that he boasts on his videos. I actually watched the surgery last night. It's a quick surgery, man. He gets in there 10 minutes or so, in and out. He allows for range of motion within a week, strengthening already, doing some grip stuff in 3 weeks. And, it's going to be a little bit different for Drew, and we'll go into the pros and cons of it. But he boasts like 4 to 5 weeks. There's not much restrictions going out afterwards, and we can kind of get into what that means for him from a prognostic standpoint.
That's incredible. I mean, though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death of Brees here for the next couple weeks, we have Simo. Fear no evil. This guy's putting in the film study for y'all, watching tapes of surgeries. Geez, we're watching all 22 views. This guy's watching surgeries. Simo, that's why we bring you on. This is incredible. But yeah, let's get into that a little bit, because you did say it's different for you or me to go out to our normal daily lives in 6 weeks, with a repaired UCL ligament. But why is it different for Brees, a guy that makes his career living off of gripping a football?
Right. So, I mean, the good thing with his recovery that's probably going to differentiate between us, and it's not a surprise, but one, I mean, he's going to have access to the greatest care available. Not many of us are going to get to go see a guy out in LA, get a second opinion in Houston, and then fly back to LA to get the surgery for the most innovative technique around. From there, I mean, it's just a time commitment, right? I know people always joke about his focus with Jimmy Johns and Untuck It and off the field, but I mean, you listen to the guy speak today. He's committed. He's going to be one focus, and that's getting back on the field. And the fact that he can dedicate 24/7 in this recovery process is just going to boast better for his outcomes. Now, I mean, the only cons, like we talked about, is one, I mean, admittedly, the guy's old, right? I mean, he's in his 40s. It's going to play a little bit into his recovery. Now, is the difference between like him with this injury and maybe a young Kyler Murray a week difference? No, but maybe a couple of days in terms of how much quicker he can come back onto the field. Again, he's going to be gripping a football. It's his dominant hand. The ligament's non-contractile, but it's still a big part of the stability of what's going on in that joint and how you generate a lot of that force. And then finally, think about how he actually injured it, right? The susceptibility of that arm coming down. How many times do we see the thumb hitting the helmet? I mean, this guy hit Aaron Donald's bear paw and he was able to tear it. But things like that have to kind of be considered when coming back. And that's what we look at when kind of devising where will he come back and when will he come back. And if we want to, we can kind of get into where that might be and where I might see him coming back to.
Well, real quickly, Dr. Simo, let's get which date do you have circled? I know Ron and I have that divisional matchup after the bye versus the Falcons, and we'll lead into the conclusion of this because there are other questions that we need to address. And you have us all prepared for the MCATs now. We appreciate you for all of the great information that you provided. But more so than the information is the optimism. And that's what we really need right now, because Ron painted the proper picture of doom and gloom using great Bible verses there. But we all have Falcons return. Dr. Simo, what do you have?
Look, man, so first off, apologies. I do nerd out a little bit with this stuff, so if I ever go too far, don't be afraid to cut me off. But in all honesty, man, I'm honestly not too far off from it. So if we put the surgery date on the 18th, right, that would be tomorrow if we're filming this on, or record this on Tuesday. Our 6-week out date would put us on October 30th, which would kind of lead right after that Arizona game in week 8. Kind of leading right into the bye, which, it's funny. We always look at where bye weeks are and we start to project, are they important? When do we get our rest? And this might be the most opportune time to have a bye because week 10, 11-10, that'd be November 10th would put them right at that 7.5 week point before getting into that 8 weeks. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that we bring them back that game. It is at home. You think about how we might go through that 6-game split without him. I don't put it too far out of the reach that he can potentially come back for that week 10. Now, if you asked me that even a week ago, I would have said, no, he's at least 8 weeks, if not more, to come back to it. But the more I see this recovery with Dr. Shin and kind of his allowance to get back into, the more I know Drew, the kind of invincible person that he is. I honestly don't put it too far out, man. I'll put my stake kind of around it that we might get him back for week 10. Not to get the Hoodas too hopeful, but hey, I'll give out my address if y'all need it when he comes back a little bit later, should he not make that return.
We appreciate it, Dr. Simo. And in 10 words or less, tell us who you watch the games with in Houston.
Well, I try to make as many games back as I can. Trying to get back with my main man Baldwin, baby. As those wave roll, hopefully we keep the wave rolling in Houston, and then we'll do some watching together out here.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you, Dr. Simo. Ron, anything last remaining?
Simo, That's why you're the man, babe. Really appreciate you coming on.
Appreciate y'all having me. Who dat,
You're the
baby?
man, doctor.
Keep the faith. All right, Saints fans, that's all. I mean, you're only going to get that right here on Pro Saints Talk. We hope that it was as uplifting for you as it was for us. And we hope that this next segment just talks about how we're going to get through these next couple weeks, right? Jay, let's just start right at quarterback. I mean, we've got to address this. Teddy Bridgewater came in and looked visibly too slow for the game. It just looked so fast for him. I've seen better footwork in the locker room in post-game celebrations when he's riding the bike. What? I mean, I am genuinely concerned about a fan quarterback controversy here starting with Taysom Hill. So tell me why we should be getting behind Teddy, or tell me if you're on Team Taysom.
Yeah, I think after Breeze went down, Ron, I think the whole Saints offense, I think the defense played well, but the whole offense was in a fog. It was very visible. The offensive line especially was holding on every other play or getting blown by Aaron Donald, Michael Brockers, etc. Teddy Bridgewater did not have a game to be remembered with that said. But, fellow Rons, if you trace back a few episodes after the Minnesota Vikings preseason game, Bridgewater had a very high completion percentage, and he looked like a quarterback that was capable. Remember, when you sign a backup quarterback, you are hoping that backup quarterback can go 500 when your starter goes out. So we'll get into the schedule a little bit later. The Saints are paying Teddy Bridgewater $7.25 million this year. He's the number one highest paid backup quarterback in the league. Last Sunday against the Rams, he did not look like it. He lacked awareness in the pocket. He wasn't stepping up. Troy Aikman pointed out one time where he took a sack. I think it was a sack where he dropped back, 5-step drop. The guards in front of him, McCoy, blocked well. He just didn't feel it. One of those things I talked about with Breeze is that you take for granted, just his feel and pocket awareness. He doesn't necessarily have to be looking at the defensive end coming from his blind side or coming from the right side to step up in the pocket and make a strong throw downfield. Now, I want to give Bridgewater the benefit of the doubt and say that he played last year against the Panthers, but he hasn't really played meaningful football. That wasn't a very meaningful game in a long time. At one point in this guy's career, he was a Pro Bowler. Now, that was a long time ago, and he had a serious knee injury that kept him out over a year after he made that Pro Bowl. So who knows about this guy? But Sean Payton claims to know about this guy because if he didn't know about him, he wouldn't have given him $7.25 million. I'm talking a lot, but what I'm getting at is that whole game for the Saints offense after Drew Brees went down was one to forget. You saw typically ultra-dependable guys like Michael Thomas dropping footballs. So it wasn't only Bridgewater. I think he started out all right. The thing that bothered me a little bit was that he appeared to be a little apathetic. You want that spark coming from your quarterback. You want the 10 other guys on the field to be able to look at that guy in the eyes and say, all right, this guy is going to bring us down to score. He's going to bring us down to get this win. It's so much at the quarterback position intangibly, even more so than it is tangibly in some respects. Look at Drew Brees. The guy doesn't have all the talent in the world, but his leadership ability, his confidence within himself and his teammates is what separates him from the rest. What I'm getting at is, let's see what Bridgewater does this Sunday against the Seahawks with having a week of preparation, the coaching staff having a week of preparation, with the reality setting in that Brees is going to be out. This isn't a career-threatening injury. He's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks, and let's see what we can do with Teddy. Let's see if we can go 500. This is a game plan that's going to be more designed towards Bridgewater and aimed more at having success with number 5 back there instead of number 9 back there. And I think what you see great teams do, great teams aren't made of individuals. Of course, it helps to have incredible individuals like Drew Brees, but you are very capable of winning as a team if you play together as one. And I think you'll see that this Sunday with the Saints. They're going to have a ridiculously strong effort against the Seahawks and rally behind Teddy Bridgewater. And there's a lot of things that he needs to clean up going from the Rams game to the Seahawks game. But as a coaching staff, I think what you're looking at from Bridgewater is he needs to significantly improve from the Rams game to the Seahawks game. And then from the Seahawks game to the Cowboys game, he's got to improve from the Seahawks game. So one game to the next, as the game action continues on, he's got to improve each game. If you see the same guy against Seattle and against Dallas, then you're comparing number 7 behind him to Steve Young. If you're seeing the same guy that you saw against Los Angeles in those 3 weeks, then you got to let number 7 light a spark underneath the Saints offense and try to get this team to 500. But this is why they pay these guys all this money, Sean Payton, Mickey Loomis, because if you're going to pay a guy like Bridgewater to be the number 1 paid backup quarterback in the NFL, and then you're going to say those things about Taysom Hill, it's going to take a whole lot of courage and security in your job than to go the next week after the poor showing by Bridgewater to play Hill. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. I think Bridgewater's going to come out and look much improved. It's just a matter of how much better is he going to get.
Jay, and you couldn't have put it any better, right? I mean, everyone seems to go back to this. Well, he was a Pro Bowler in 2015. He's a Pro Bowler in 2015. The guy threw 14 touchdown passes in 2015 and was a Pro Bowler. He was only a Pro Bowler because Aaron Rodgers was hurt and Cam Newton was in the Super Bowl. So everybody looks back on that like that was some stellar season. It really wasn't. And so when we're talking about Bridgewater improving in this short week and then improving from week to week thereafter, what can we really expect as a ceiling? And so that's kind of the question I posed to you, Stat Ron, to bring you into this debate. Oh, what, George? You're gonna get your turn. Don't worry. I want to bring the Stat Ron in to see if he's a Teddy believer and continuing on the religious theme for me tonight, or see if he's a Latter-day Saint on Team Mormon Missile.
I think, like Jay had said, there's a reason why Bridgewater was brought back for another year. And the hope is that he could, get this team through this stretch while Breeze is out and finish 500 and hopefully, in that second half of the season, have Breeze propel the Saints with a division that's looking somewhat weak at the moment that could still have some light at the end of the tunnel. And I think you have to feel it out. You can't just have knee-jerk reactions when there's a bad half from Bridgewater. And I don't think Peyton's the coach to kind of to have those knee-jerk reactions. I think he'll stick with this guy. He'll have a game plan centered around Bridgewater. But I do think that there is some sort of timetable in Peyton's head as to if Bridgewater is not showing these, and these things by a certain period of time, that there is going to be some sort of change. And the other question that I have, too, is that, and this kind of transitions over to Taysom, is that, you think about all the different ways that he's used in this offense. What does his role get limited to now that he is the backup quarterback, right? I think, with Breeze, he's the third quarterback and he's doing all these things: kick, punt returns, tight end, running back, receiver. You can't afford to have Hill get hurt as well with playing all these different positions. And so that's another thing I'm interested to see is what Peyton will do with this offense now without Breeze, and just kind of a different weighting of your quarterbacks. But I think you stick with Bridgewater at least through the first 2 games and see what happens from there.
George, I'll let you have it. Is there a cutoff time that Peyton makes this decision like Stat Ron's talking about, or are we all in on Team Teddy? Where are you standing on this?
Ron, you can give any excuse you want for Teddy Bridgewater. Any excuse you want. You can say, oh, he's making a lot of money. Oh, he deserves an opportunity. He's been Breeze's backup. Whatever you want to say, it's enough. We're better off with Taysom. And it's so evident. It's so evident. Teddy Bridgewater is lackluster and makes you go crazy that he can't move the ball. He is zero threat back there. He doesn't belong. Sure, he was a Pro Bowler. Sure, he's bided his time. Oh, he's well paid. That doesn't matter. We need to win. Taysom Hill is not perfect. He's far from perfect. He's going to stare down receivers. He's going to miss throws. This is not a knee-jerk reaction. We know who Bridgewater is. Bridgewater is lousy. Bridgewater is no good. We've seen it this offseason. We've seen it last year versus the Panthers.
What
more do you want to see from him?
Then why did Sean Payton pay him $7.5 million?
Why does he pay?
To be fair,
there's other people we pay incorrectly too. We gave Bird money. We gave Spiller money. That doesn't make him a good investment. We've made mistakes, and the sooner we transition from
Did
Teddy
we pull the plug
Bridgewater,
on Bird after 2 games?
I did.
we should have. Maybe we didn't, but we sure should have. We gave him way too long of a leash, and we had to wallow in it, and now we're going to wallow in Bridgewater.
Yeah. I still go back to what's the ceiling on Teddy and what's the ceiling on Taysom Hill. Statron brought up excellent points. If you move Taysom Hill in now, you got to replace him in 6 other places. You know, it's like plugging one hole in the boat and then you got 6 more spring up. So it could challenge you from a roster standpoint of just, do you have to make some serious transactions here? But George, you are spot on. The post-game press conference that Peyton gave was nothing but excuses for Teddy. He said, quote, he was a professional. He came out ready to play. My ass. That guy signed this past offseason knowing that, hey, I'm backing up an Iron Man, but I'm backing up a 40-year-old quarterback, and I'm only here because I think I'm the heir apparent to this offensive throne. I mean, this is a freaking throne with Peyton and Carmichael and all the weapons around him. And that's what he shows you. That guy wasn't game ready, and I think we can all agree on that.
Statron, in your heart of hearts, despite the fact, okay, Bridgewater might get a week with the team in this makeshift training camp in Washington. Who is a better maestro of the offense? Who can actually be a threat? Who can actually move the ball from point A to the touchdown? Across the field. I'm not vocalizing this well or verbalizing my thoughts properly, but in all honesty, who is an actual threat at the quarterback position, Bridgewater or Hill?
I wouldn't say you could say either of them are. I mean, honestly, what substantial amount of time has Hill had playing the quarterback position for the Saints, right? Like, I just don't think that we don't know, right? Like yes, in the preseason, in the third and fourth quarter, Taysom Hill looked like the stud of all studs and the stud that we know that he is, right? But I just don't know if you start him in a regular season game, how he's going to produce and what's that going to compare to Teddy. I just think that you need to give both a sample size, and I think the first shot goes to Teddy. It's his spot to lose, and again, that's what they brought him in for. That's what they traded for him.
You just said the stud that we know he is, in quotes. You just said the stud that we know he is. We know he's a gamer. We know he can play. Look, Breeze is out until the Atlanta game, give or take, 8 weeks. Run Taysom Hill till the wheels fall off. Run. I'm not worried about losing our third tight end or our fourth wide receiver or our punt blocker. That can be replaced by Emmanuel Butler / Dan Arnold and Hardy Jr., Sr., whichever it is. That's not what we need right now. We need a quarterback that can move the ball. Okay, Statron, you're right, but maybe you're right. You give Bridgewater a shot. But at the end of the day, the sooner the Saints give the ball to clickbait, the better. Final answer.
Well, Jay, I'll give you one last closing comment on this because, I still can't get over where this scouting report comes on Teddy because I can't get a read on what skills he does really bring to the table other than maybe some intangibles because I don't know, maybe from your days in college football, you could enlighten us on scouting report on this guy in Louisville, but he was known to not have a very strong arm coming out of high school and college. It was, he had the pop gun arm, and that's why he had several quarterbacks go ahead of him in the draft. He wasn't very highly recruited coming out of high school. And to me, I think people perceive him and for whatever reason as an athletic quarterback. And we saw all preseason long, we saw on a play in this past weekend's game that the guy just doesn't have the wheels, and he is obviously a far cry from the 4.4 speed that Taysom Hill has. But what is this guy bringing to the table? What does Peyton see in him, and how much pressure is on Peyton right now as a quarterback evaluator?
Yeah, they're all good questions. And, George, I appreciate your passion. I see the same thing that you see in Taysom Hill. Looking at it from the rational position, Sean Payton is a Hall of Fame head coach, the best offensive coordinator of our generation, and that's not hyperbole. So when he's got a chance to evaluate a guy day in, day out for 365 days or a full football year, and then he decides to make the conscious decision while also having Taysom Hill on his roster to make him the highest paid backup quarterback in the league to potentially supplant Breeze or follow up Breeze when Breeze is done and be the starter, I myself am going to trust Peyton and not going to have, call it a knee-jerk reaction after the Rams game where everybody, quite frankly, on offense looked like shit and say that play number 7, Bridgewater looked terrible. Bridgewater looked bad. But so did Larry Warford, all-pro offensive guard. So did Terron Armstead getting beat. So did Jarrett Cook, who's been a great tight end for a number of years. Michael Thomas looked average. Like, everybody looked freaking bad. So, Ron, to answer your question, what does Bridgewater bring? I think he throws the ball nicely. I think he throws a nice deep ball. I want to see more mobility in the pocket. His awareness was really bad on Sunday. But what I'm saying is bring him back out there against Seattle and bring him back out there against Dallas, and let's see this team rally around Bridgewater and all play up together when everybody's jaw's not on the ground because the guy that's played 13 straight years for your New Orleans Saints and been a constant and been a first-ballot Hall of Famer goes out in this all-or-nothing year that we've been talking about with an injury that looks like it could have been for the year. Let me see what Bridgewater can do against Seattle because I trust Sean Payton and I trust Mickey Loomis. Yes, this guy behind him is extremely intriguing. And yes, at some point, give him a chance. But I'm not here to say at this point, play Taysom Hill right now. I think there's still some developing to be done with Hill.
Yeah, and Jay, you do bring us back to earth a little bit, right? This is a team sport, and they did look like an awful team. George alluded to it. We might as well have not even come off the bus. Just no good came out of this game. That being said, nobody in the quarterback position is going to perform well with an offensive line that can't block. And we can bring into question what Peyton's game plan was against Aaron Donald because I personally didn't see one. It kind of just thought, yeah, we're just going to play them straight up one-on-one. We're going to win our matchups, which no one in the league has been able to do that the last 3 seasons. So that's a concern because Seattle does bring a decent pass rush, and we have questions now on the offensive line. Andrews Pete, for as big of a goat as he was this past weekend, is questionable. We won't even know his injury status before this podcast gets issued. So that's a huge question mark, George. Who's going to start at left guard? Are we seriously talking about throwing Will Clapp into freaking the Seattle road game?
Well, good question. Because when the inactives were unleashed and unveiled that Sunday afternoon, Nick Easton was listed inactive, and he's not hurt. So they truly believe Will Clapp is ahead of Easton on the depth chart in the pecking order. So they must have, at that time, more faith in Clapp. But I think if you go based off what you saw from the Rams game, you might want to put Easton back on top. So I'd say Easton comes in for Pete for a week or two. But Stat Ron, you might maybe to catch everybody up. And guys, this is Tuesday, going to be unleashed Wednesday. There's been a flurry of activity that happened tonight and will continue happening through tomorrow. But up to date, Stat Ron, a lot of transactions. Why don't you just bam, bam, bam real quick, just so everyone's on the same page going for the rest of this podcast on today's transactions.
Yeah, sure. Happy to go ahead and do it. So Alex Anzalone was moved to the IR. He only played 18 snaps. Obviously had the shoulder injury. So it looks like without Alex Anzalone, Kiko Alonso will step up into his place. The Saints put Keith Kirkwood on the IR today. The Saints signed JT Barrett back to the practice squad and released Taylor Stallworth. You would think that the Stallworth release is due to Mario Edwards getting back onto the roster. And also Carl Granderson got taken off the commissioner's exempt list and onto the 53-man roster.
Now, that was the one I thought was the strangest because we essentially cut Stallworth and activated Granderson to D-end. And thus far, I loved our DN play, namely with T-Rex coming out of nowhere. So you think, oh, you only have 3 DNs. Mario Edwards can go inside and outside. So to me, that was a bit of a head scratcher. And Ron, that really shows you, hey, this team has a lot of faith in Shy Tuttle. The fact that he's playing and even making the team ahead of Stallworth, who we loved last year.
No doubt, a huge success story, and that is one of the few positives from week 2, right? Is the entire defensive line play. Got tons of pressure. It just was never enough. You got to give credit to Goff. He made the throws, with arms in his face, with the pocket collapsing. We hit him a ton. We hit Watson a ton in week 1. It's just not translating to turnovers, and we could get into why it might not be translating into turnovers with a few whistles getting blown. But yeah, you got to be pleased with what you're seeing on the defensive line. But at the same time, how depressing is it when you have these injuries in addition to Breeze? And so, Stat Ron, I didn't want to interrupt you, but how nice does that Kiko Alonso trade look now? I mean, that feels like a nice little security blanket. Kirkwood's a shame, but we had some depth there. We had some guys that we were honestly more excited about on the practice squad. Maybe one of those guys gets a bump up. George, as you alluded to, Emmanuel Butler. So, as we alluded to, something new could be born out of this. So I think we've stalled on this one long enough. Let's just get into the Cam Jordan play. George, from my interpretation of it, this is the Ed Hockley rule, right? You think back to that game that Hockley, who was already famous for his biceps, got infamous for the blown whistle. I think it was Broncos Chargers, and it was a game-deciding turnover late in the game that he blew dead, and it was a fumble. And so, sure enough, that offseason, they go in, they change the rule. They actually name it the Hockley rule, I believe. But maybe they didn't take it far enough. I mean, is this one of those NBA things? Could we get unabated to the end zone for crying out loud, or do we have to think about the 0.01% chance that somebody's going to run him down from the 1 and tackle him before he scores? I mean, what the hell?
Well, Ron, speaking of biceps, Ron beat me in arm wrestling Saturday night after the Ballapalooza Part 2. So
multiple times.
We have to give a shout out to our boy Ron for going 2-0. That was motivation for the gym the rest of the week. But look, Ron, so about the Cam Jordan play. The NFL said, hey, when the Rams and the Saints rematch week 2, we need to get this right. We have to ref this game properly. For the love of God, we don't want another Hullapalooza. We don't need another lawsuit. We don't need all that. We have to get this one right. And what do? Another bonehead mistake. I mean, this is clearly reffing 101. Hey, on a turnover, let the play out. It's automatically reviewed. There's no need to blow the whistle. It's automatically reviewed. It's a error on a week that it never should have happened, but it keeps happening. And you don't want to get too deep down the rabbit hole. Is it more than just unfair and unlucky? Is it systemic? No, it's not systemic. It's just extremely unlucky. But let's give a kudos to the whole defensive line and the whole defense, because at the end of this game, a lot of people are saying, man, what happened to our defense? It's not the same. Our offense couldn't get the ball moving, couldn't generate enough first downs in order to get the defense rested and off the field for a minute. So, yeah, they were holding tough. They were making plays, and they lost their mojo after that touchdown was called off the board. So, guys, I think our defense is looking okay, looking pretty good. They're going to run out of gas if the offense can't hold on to the ball. And they maybe missed some penalties. I don't want to get too deep down the refs. It's not good entertainment, but the Traquan Smith and then the holding on Cam Jordan, there was more than that. But as a whole, Jay, I think our D played pretty good. What do you think about our defense going forward?
Yeah, you guys touched on the defensive line. That's been positive, especially with Sheldon Rankins out. Cam Jordan I think he's gotten better every year he's been in the NFL. And this year, just watching him play has been fun as a fan. He really comes off the ball. He's so smart, uses great technique. That fumble where he picked it up, scooped, scored, that you guys were just talking about, looked really fast on that return. Good-looking player. Trey Hendrickson, surprise out of nowhere. We've been talking about him on the podcast, had a great preseason, already has 3 sacks. Marcus Davenport, George, I saw the retweet on Pro Saints Talk, rated at 85 by Pro Football Focus. Man, I love to see that. Got on the board with 1 sack. I think that, Ron, you were talking about Klein's play a little bit. The Rams were having success with those sweeps right and left, running outside on the tackles, and we failed to get there on the outside. We actually looked pretty good against the run on the interior. It's going to be a big boost to get Rankins back. Defensive secondary, seems like Lattimore's not getting beat like a drum, but he is getting beat. It seems like there's been some unfortunate plays where good players like Hopkins and Brandon Cooks are making plays. That 1-yard touchdown pass from Goff to Cooks was an incredible grab by Cooks, and Hopkins made some incredible plays the week before. But, hey, as number 1 cornerback, you're going to be guarding the best guy every week, so you got to bring it. So I think Lattimore's play needs to improve. But, George, I think you said it Sunday, and you reiterated it again. And that Rams offense has been number 1 in the NFL since 2017. And the Saints defense held the Rams offense to 6 points in the first half. And they got going in the second half. And, George, I completely agree. I'd like to see time of possession, stat Ron, if you have that, because it felt like the defense was out there an awful lot. But I think defensive hopes went down. They got tired. It was clear. I'd like to see, for 60 minutes, the Saints had the same effort as they had in the first half. But I think it was definitely a step from week 1 to week 2.
And time of possession was actually pretty even. The Rams had 30 minutes and 21 seconds, while the Saints had 29 minutes and 39 seconds.
Isn't that
kind of
crazy?
shocking.
Yeah, that doesn't feel that way at all, especially considering how poorly we ran the ball. And that's going to be so important over these next 6 weeks, right? So that kind of gets me thinking. It gets me thinking, is this a time where we're really missing Mark Ingram? I know Murray's been good. I mean, it's not a huge drop-off, but even just from leadership.
Especially right now, Ron, especially without Breeze, to have a guy that can slam it in between the tackles, because Murray really isn't that guy. He can run in between the tackles, but he's more going to run to elude you and not run over you. And you worry a little bit. I think that's a great point, Ron. I was thinking about it today. You don't want to slam Kamara up there too often. I think Peyton made a good adjustment going from week 1 to week 2 and using Alvin Kamara less and trying to incorporate Murray more. But I think especially when you lose Breeze, you would rather a hammerhead like Ingram while Murray's gone.
Exactly, man. This is the time where you get so on eggshells. You get so nervous about a Kamara injury that could really derail this season. You know, we got that glimmer of optimism from Simo's segment, and by golly, you gotta. It's like you said, you got to ride Murray right now. I mean, look at that defensive front for the Rams that we're talking about to keep it in perspective. But Kamara is just not the guy between the tackles. That's just not where I want to see him taking a beating.
Ron, I got 3 names for you that I had written down that I would like to go. We'd like to go over to see upgrades from. One was Latavius Murray because we're going to need to rely on him in the life without Brees for this 8 weeks. Number 2 was Jared Cook. He's going to need to step up because so far this season he's been a disappointment. And this whole roster, all the role players are going to have to go from good to great. They're going to have to step it up significantly with life without Brees. And Jared Cook needs to be that cushion for our boy Bridgewater or Clickbait, whoever it is. And 3, Ron, and this is one that has an exclamation mark and written in all capital letters, is Sean Payton. This is by far his biggest challenge. He's had Drew Brees. He's had the best quarterback in the stable. He's had the fastest horse. That's what I meant to say, the fastest horse in the stable. And now he doesn't. And now he still needs to win the race. And what we didn't see much of on last Sunday versus the Rams was very innovative offensive gadget plays to generate offense. There was nothing outside the box we saw Sunday that he's going to need to incorporate going forward to move the ball down the field, because running just a regular Drew Brees offense is not going to work nowadays. We have to he's got a lot of tricks up his sleeves. Now's the time to unveil them.
Yeah, but that second point you made about role players have to step up now more than ever, and they really need to elevate their game. Haven't we said for so long that Brees is what elevates all of these role players that maybe wouldn't even make a roster, some of them, or definitely wouldn't have the careers that they had under this offense? So isn't that just so that's tough to get optimistic about. But Jared Cook.
My point being, like the drop that he had, Jared Cook, you got to catch that. We have, or the drop that Mike Thomas, help your dog Bridgewater out. He needs all the help he can get. That's my point.
Yeah, and to Jay's point, that improvement of week to week, there aren't many reps in a game week. Once you get into the season, you're really limited on the reps in practice. And so that's where I see some of those drops getting eliminated this week, just getting that timing with Bridgewater, because it's a different release. It's a different velocity maybe on the ball, spin rate. We could get into the sports science stat run on all that stuff, but it was obvious that the receivers just weren't used to catching a Teddy Bridgewater ball across the board. So I look for that to dramatically improve. Right, Jay?
Yeah, I think so. I think you saw that, Ron. You pointed that out. I think Bridgewater throws with a different touch than Brees. Just the touch that Brees throws with to the running back that's coming out the backfield when he swings it to his left or right. Seems like it's such a catchable ball, where Bridgewater was really firing it in there. Ron, I agree with that, and I think that will improve as Bridgewater gets more reps with the ones. But, George, to counterpoint you on Sean Payton, yes, we've had Seabiscuit as far as Drew Brees is concerned, but Seabiscuit wasn't Seabiscuit until Brees was joined at the hip with Sean Payton. He was a good quarterback, not a great quarterback, and then he got in Sean Payton's offense, and Payton was able to develop him. Now, have they helped out each other? Mutually beneficial relationship? Sure. But Payton is as creative as a play caller as it gets, and sometimes it's as subtle as putting Latavius Murray to the right of Drew Brees in a shotgun formation and using him. The whole defense is going to think run tendency with Murray back there, but instead they're going to flank that little screen out to the right with Ryan Ramczyk in front of him, similar to how they use Kamara, but it's different because it's Murray. So there's a lot of little things that Sean Payton does that it may not look like a reverse or a flea flicker or things like that make him so good and make him the best of the best. And I think you'll see him show out with Bridgewater the next 6 to 8 weeks.
Well, we're all hoping for that. It's just the challenge, as I said. there aren't many reps in a game week, and how many wrinkles, how much drastic change can you make to an offense? Hopefully not much, and maybe that's why he likes Teddy Bridgewater, because he feels like he can do a lot of the same things that he would do with Breeze. So we'll see if that translates. Now, something that never translated, Breeze has never taken this team up to Seattle and won a game. I can't remember that ever happening. StatRon, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe Teddy's just the right juju we need to break that freaking curse and get over that goddamn beastquake that has haunted us for the last freaking decade. So what's it going to take to win in Seattle, George? I mean, we talked about the run game. We've talked at length, beat the whole dead horse of how Bridgewater's got to improve. But what's it going to take as a team to win this game? You got a 2-0 Seattle team.
You want to talk about beating a dead horse? Clickbait sports needed. But if you're going to win with Bridgewater, I'd like to see some innovative offense with clickbait. Get him more involved. You're going to just have to have the whole team rally for Drew Brees and just say, hey, we're in this god-awful situation, and this is not what we planned. And now we have 3 or 4 more guys added to the IR, and Drew Brees out for half the season. And say, hey, we're not going to just let this be like the Atlanta Falcons year last year and keep the ship afloat. It's not going to take a miracle for us to stay relevant here. So if the guys can kind of rally around the anthem of, hey, we're going to do this for Breeze, then I can see it happening. But I'm not overly optimistic. I think we'll be okay. Like my grandfather always said, when it's good, it's never as good as you think it is, and when it's bad, it's never as bad as you think it is. And we went from a Super Bowl contender with Breeze. It's not like we're going to go to Miami Dolphins without him. So we're not going to be a horrible team. I think we're going to be like a Washington Redskins type team where, hey, we're competitive, going to lose a lot of games or a good bit of games, but we might be able to pull off some wins too. We're going to be right around the Redskins in life without Breeze. But to answer your question, what do I think that the Saints need to beat Seahawks isn't going to be utilized or used, because it's the same word, Taysom Hill.
Yeah, George, that's a great point about, where we stand as a team. And thanks for, again, just bringing us back to earth, because you can get so carried away, right, when something like this happens. But yeah, I look at this first half of the season and the opponents we had and the strength of schedule, and I looked at it as an opportunity for a bye week, a 1 or a 2 seed. If you come out of this clean, you're in a dominant position. But we're not going to be in that position. As Jay said, a good backup quarterback, maybe he can get us 3-3 over the next 6 weeks. You're right in the mix because your next 4 opponents are all divisional. You go Falcons week 10, 11 it's Bucks, 12 Carolina, 13 back Falcons again. So you could very easily be right back in the mix for the division. And I think that's all we would need, right? Breeze could come back laser focus. You can make that playoff run, maybe not from the position that we would like, because we all know our history and when we have home field advantage. But this team is not out. It's like George said, y'all. It's not as bad as everyone thinks it is. It's not as great as everyone thinks it is either, because we've been telling you, or I've been telling you, what the ceiling is on Bridgewater. But this is a whole team, right, Jay? There's plenty of ways to win a game.
I got some more positive Kool-Aid for you, Ron.
I need it.
All right, and we're going up to Seattle, and that is an incredibly tough place to play. Is it still called Quest Stadium, StatRon? I don't know, but
CenturyLink.
CenturyLink. There's 80,000 screaming Seattle fans that are thrilled to be outside after being cooped up, trying to hide out from the rain, going crazy. They're loud in there. The stadium is situated as such that the seats feel like they're right on top of you. It gets very loud. But with all that said, Richard Sherman is not on these Seattle Seahawks. Earl Thomas is not on these Seattle Seahawks. Who else am I missing? Chancellor is not on these Seattle Seahawks. So these Seahawks look a lot different than years past. The guy that's still there similar to a Luke Kuechly in our division, is Bobby Wagner, who's going to be a Hall of Fame player. Also, a guy to take note of on defense. He missed last game. The Saints were in the running for him last offseason, is Ziggy Ansah. But we didn't face him in week 1, but we're going to face him this week as Jadeveon Clowney. So he's going to be the threat on the defensive line. But my point is, this Seahawks team, while they may be 2-0, they struggled to beat Cincinnati, who's not going to be 500 this year. And they barely beat a Ben Roethlisberger-less Pittsburgh Steelers last week, 28-26. Granted, still a good win in Pittsburgh. Always have a good team and not an easy place to play. So while they still may be 2-0, while they still have Russell Wilson, a great quarterback in this league, it's not like this team is the Brett Favre Green Bay Packers and we're going to Lambeau. The Saints have a decent shot to win this ball game. And calling all my Rons, Seattle, more like Pacific NOLA West this weekend, this Sunday. We got Stat Ron going up. We got Geo going up. We got Spank Crane going up. We got Palmer going up. My brother lives in Seattle. The Rons are going hard this weekend in Seattle. Not only is it going to be the 53 down there on the field that are bonding together, but the Rons are all going to come together and rally to pull this thing out. And we're going to start this Bridgewater era with a W and hope for not just 500, but better than that, and build on it as number 9 returns. And the story is going to be beautiful. Goes out with a thumb injury. Looks bleak. Saints are, say, 500, a little bit better than 500. Breeze returns, gets better game to game. And now he's looking like he's in prime come the wild card round, leads the Saints to the Super Bowl win. So fear not, Saints fans. It's going to be all right.
Jay, that's you're not kidding about some positive mojo. Pro Saints talk, avid followers planting the flag up in Seattle. I feel better already. That's incredible news. And just like you said, and like Dr. Simo broke down for us, Breeze, I have a lot of optimism that he's going to come back damn near 100% just because that range of motion is going to be available to him. He's going to be able to practice leading up to it. It's not going to be one of those, all right, plug him right in for game week and get him as many reps as, or, maybe even limited reps in that practice week. No, I think he's going to be ready to go when he comes back. So that is encouraging for me. George, you talked about the mentality. I think the mentality also needs to be stressed. I don't know if I expect Sean Payton and the team to actually use this as motivation, but you look around this division, I don't think anybody's going to go out blazing a trail in front of us and make it hard for us to catch up. Am I right?
No, bad news to come out for the Cam Newton Panthers. Looks like he's sustained an injury that's going to prevent him from playing week 3. So they're going to have Allen playing. Falcons barely escaped a win versus the Eagles week 2. Nelson Aguilar had all the Rons and Houdat's pulling their hair out on that drop pass. So they're going to be very in touch and go. And the Bucs have week 3. Daniel Jones' first start. So we're going to be on NFC South watch all season while Breeze. We already are. But especially now, because we just need the life without Breeze quarterback to keep us within striking distance of those top NFC South teams, and will remain relevant. Because I agree. Like Dr. Simo said, Breeze is to come back strong. So from the home stretch, we have them. We'll be kosher. We'll be roses. We just need to not fall out of relevancy in these 8 weeks. Falcons could – you don't know what they're going to do. So we just have to keep a keen eye on their outcomes going forward. But Jay did a great job talking about painting the picture of what it's going to be like in Seattle. But I would really like to know what the weather's going to be like in Seattle now, because Weatherman Ren is shooting birds in Canada. We got a promotion. We got an upgrade. We got Papa Red. We got Big Eddie.
Papa Red.
Report.
How's it going, Whodats? It's Big Red substituting for a vacationing Red, the Weatherman. What a loss we suffered last week, in more ways than one. But let's look ahead to week 3. Looks like it might be cold and wet, with temperatures between 56 and 63 degrees. Winds of 5 to 10 miles an hour and a 50% chance of rain for a kickoff against the Seattle Seahawks at 3:25 at CenturyLink Field in downtown Seattle, one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL, second only to our own Superdome. Let's all give a great big thumbs up to Drew Brees and our home team, and don't forget, there's no replacement for Red, the weatherman.
All right, thank you, Big Eddie. And Stat Ron, you're going to be there. So bring your rain jacket. And how could that potential rain change the game for Bridgewater in the offense?
Yeah, well, luckily Bridgewater wears a glove at all times, not only when it's raining. So he may be okay gripping the football, but like just any traditional mantra, when there's rain, you got to hold on to the football. Receivers usually take off those gloves. It depends on how much of a downpour it is, but you got to establish the run game and just kind of be extra careful with limiting turnovers. And I'll have my rain jacket on. I'll also be jacked up on some nitro cold brew. So hopefully I'll be, just right there with the 12th man. Hopefully can have some sort of competitive advantage here with all the Who that's going to be out there. But yeah, no, I'll have my rain jacket for sure. But I think it's just protecting the football, honestly, and trying to establish the run if the weather does actually end up being a factor.
Excellent expert analysis, Stat Ron. And I think that's a perfect transition to our game predictions. I think we've vetted out enough of what's going on with the Saints, and I hope y'all have done y'all's homework on the Seahawks. George, I'll give you the honors this week to go first on the game prediction since I went first last week. Give us your prediction. What do you expect for key matchups?
Oh, key matchups or okay, I'll do both.
Give me both. Give me both.
I'm always ready.
Both.
So Carson has had 3 fumbles this season, and he almost had a 4th. So you might see more Penny in this Week 3 matchup versus the Saints, and I think that bodes well for us. So this is going to be them unleashing their former first-round pick, who's been on the sidelines most of his season and a half. So I think we're going to see more Penny, which is interesting. Keep an eye on him. Lockett is their number 1. So Lattimore is off to a bad start this season. But Lockett's not a burner. He's not Julio Jones. He's not Odell. Let's see if Lattimore can right the ship in rainy, wet conditions and lock down Lockett, pun intended. So I want to see Lattimore come to life, and lock down Lockett. So yeah, Week 1 we didn't have to face Clowney, and now he's on our front doorstep in Seattle. Week 3. So let's see if our O-line plays better, because they had a horrendous showing, as does everybody, versus the Rams D-line, but an especially bad showing. So they're going to be tested. And I'm going to be watching Easton, because this offseason, he looked like Tim Lolito 2.0. No, thank you. Pete's gone. Can he step up? So to answer your question, I'm going to go twofold. 1, those are the guys I'm watching for. 2, game prediction, 9 Saints, 24 Seahawks. It's not going to be pretty.
Yikes.
Wow.
Man. Just broken record. All right, Jay, we'll kick it over to you now.
All right. 9-24. Damn. All right. So the matchup I'm going to watch is the offensive line this week, similar to George. You don't have to be talented to be tough. Every player needs to make a promise to themselves and to their teammate that they're going to be the tougher team this week, and they're going to hit Seattle in the mouth every single play, and they got to bring just that much more without number 9. We got to establish the run game. There was nothing there for Murray or Kamara running the football last week. We've got to run first to set up the pass, and we need to see guys like Warford. We need to see guys like Pete tough it out, be back in there. McCoy continue to improve. Ramczyk, Armstead, be the all-pros that they are, and hit the defensive line in their mouths. Should be getting 5 yards a carry to set up Teddy Bridgewater in this play-action passing game. Last week you watched the Rams. You saw guys like Robert Woods. They're total receivers. They don't just catch the ball, but they're looking to be physical and block every single play. That's the same mentality the Saints need to bring in this week. Rashad Penny, Army played him. We played him in a bowl game 2 years ago. He hits the hole fast, and he can get to that second level fast. And linebackers have to play well and tackle that guy, because once he reaches the second level, he's gone. There's a reason why they picked him in the first round, but he's not going to have success this week. I'm saying Saints 24, Seattle 21. Seattle misses a potential game-tying field goal as time expires to seal the Saints' victory.
Excellent. All right, Stat Ron, I'll let you go next. I'll wrap it up for us here on game predictions.
All right, sounds good. I second Jay. I think the Saints need to establish the run to set up the pass, get Murray involved a little bit more, and see kind of what you can do there. And then another thing I'll be looking out for: Russell Wilson has been sacked 8 times already this season, 4 in each of the last 2 games. And with DJ Fluker, we'll see what injury reports are looking like this week, but possibility he may not play on Sunday. And so interested to see if the defensive line can continue the play that they've had through the first 2 weeks. I think the Saints squeak one out 16-14 with a Will Lutz game-winning field goal reminiscent of week 1. Lutz gets the job done again.
Well, I guess I'm going to be the one that balances us out, because I'll tell you what I'm going to be looking at. The rush defense. We talked about this defense all last year. They were second in the league. It was truly remarkable, the drastic improvement we saw as the season went on. You got Onyemata back, and all of a sudden the 180 yards that they gave up in week 1 shrunk down to 115. Now, you can't even really say that was tempo of the game this past week, because the Rams, for the most part, had it comfortably in hand and could have just been running out the clock. So they still held it to a pretty reasonable number. So I'll be looking for them to limit Chris Carson and Russell Wilson himself. Similar quarterback to Deshaun Watson, stay in the rush lanes, keep him in the pocket, and try to limit those creative plays. Those seem to always be backbreakers for this defense, because we seem to lose guys in coverage, or God forbid, that's when we get a holding or an illegal contact in the defensive backfield. So I think those are going to be critical things on defense. We've already hit on all of the points on offense that I would hit anyway. Running the ball, obvious one this week. But what I really just want to see is enough hope out of Teddy Bridgewater, enough hope-inspiring play, so that when he comes home in week 4 to play the Cowboys, which is, we all know how tough a matchup that's going to be, I just don't want to see this fan base turn on him when they go 3-and-out the first possession of week 4, and everybody's booing this team that, like Jay said, this story's not over. We could be going to the Super Bowl. God forbid we're booing the future Super Bowl champions. So that's what I want to see. I hope to God that Bridgewater is going to give us some hope-inspiring play and at least just exhibit some leadership out there and start to win over the rest of this team. So with that, I will say Seahawks 20, Saints 14. They come up shy on a game-winning touchdown drive. So much for that hope.
Ron, can I give you one more player?
Sure.
Kiko Alonso, because Anzalone's out now, and they're going to run the ball a lot, as you just mentioned, and that is a lot Kiko's forte. So he's going to be thrust in there to step up and stop the run. Let's see what we got in this guy we traded for in the offseason.
Okay, so enough of game predictions. It's time for a growing portion of the show, and I mean, I hate that it takes a freaking injury like this to stem this interest, but man, I put out this feeler literally an hour before we recorded this, and we've got numerous fan questions. Okay, so let's just start it off. I'm going to direct this one at Jay. I guess you're my closest thing to a local Tiger right here. Who's going to get more touchdown receptions this season? Is it going to be Michael Thomas, or is it going to be Justin Jefferson of the LSU Tigers?
Yeah, you're right. Jefferson has what, 4 through 3, 5 through 3?
I'm going to defer to Statron.
Statron, I think Thomas has 0 through 2. My answer is
I can confirm that from fantasy. Yes, he has 0 through 2.
My answer with Breeze going
And Jefferson
down,
has 4. Jefferson has 4. Sorry.
yeah, so that's a pretty good lead. The Tigers haven't gotten into SEC play yet, but Joey Ballgame is looking like a legitimate Heisman threat with Joe Brady up there calling the plays. I'm going to have to go with Jefferson, but I expect Thomas to come on. He came on pretty big in that second half and ended up with near 100 yards receiving with Bridgewater back there. But I see Jefferson having more touchdowns.
Okay, this next one is from our very own sound engineer and producer, so I love that he's getting engaged on the front end.
That's my boy. That's my boy.
Instead of the back end. Our boy Andrew. And I think we already know where everyone stands, so I'm just going to call y'all out where y'all stand. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's saying, who do we want to see run the show, Clickbait or Bridgewater? Are we a Saints fan on Team Teddy, or are we a Latter-day Saint on the Team Mormon Missile? I personally am on Clickbait. George, I believe you're on Clickbait. Statron, I believe you're
1,000%.
also on Clickbait. Am I right?
No, I'm Team Teddy for the
Team
first
Teddy.
2 and assess after those 2.
That's right. That's right. You gave him a timeline, and then Jay's all in on Team Teddy. Am I right?
I'm Team Teddy timeline.
Oh, team! Now you're backing off to the timeline. Damn, we must have did some convincing.
We actually have the luxury on this show of having it recorded. So if you scroll back to my opening monologue, I talk about having him play against Seattle and having him play against Dallas and then reassessing.
Next one.
Ron, I'd like to, before you move on, I'd like to get 2 cents in. I want to reiterate one more thing. The sooner we put in Clickbait, the better. And you can save that and replay it as many times as y'all want. The sooner we put in Clickbait, the better.
George, what if Clickbait goes? This isn't a fan question. This is a Ron question. What if Clickbait is like the second coming of Jake Delhomme, goes to a NFC South rival, takes him to a Super Bowl? Would you just lose your mind?
I would be very happy. No.
All right. J. Lou hitting a twofer. George, I'll give you the first one here. Is Easton really that bad that he is inactive over Clapp? We touched on that earlier. Give us your 2 cents.
Worrisome. Very worrisome, the fact that they bench him in favor of Clapp, who hasn't shown himself to be a Jari Evans, Knicks type of guard. So, no, that's a big red flag to me right there for him to be in the same consideration as Will Clapp, who most likely belongs in the practice squad. I want to see Easton out there, but y'all gonna call me knee jerk and impulsive. But guys, you got to put your best foot forward. Take him out if he's not working, but let's give Easton a shot versus Seattle.
Statron, throwing this next one to you. Another thing that we touched on, but make a prediction here. When do we expect a wide receiver to be called up from the practice squad, whether it's Lil Jordan or Emmanuel Butler?
Hopefully today.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
mean, I'm going to go with Emmanuel Butler. I think, I think that they would give him a shot before Lil Jordan Humphrey. Just from all the reports out of preseason, even though, kind of came on a little bit late, but I think that they give Butler a shot.
Shit, I mean, as many drops as he had in preseason, man. I guess he can't be any worse than what we saw this past Sunday. All right, next one. Still Chamberlain, whoever that is, great follower, I'm sure. Drew loses arm strength at the end of the season the last couple of years, but maybe not this year. Can they still win this division? Can they still go to the Super Bowl?
Impressive. We have a fan question from a fan that none of us know. Does anybody know that guy?
I'll have to,
I don't
look
know.
him up.
That's a real
Shout
fan.
out to Still
That's awesome.
Chamberlain.
That's a first. Yeah, we hear you. Still, we've officially made it as a podcast. No, I think I answered it earlier. We're going to be kept afloat, whether it be by Teddy or whether it be by Taysom. Breeze is going to come in. This is a weak division. The table's set, and he's going to lead us to the promised land. My prediction from the first week has changed. Number 9 is going to come in to save the day. It's going to take him a couple weeks to get back to 100% after he's inserted into the starting lineup. But, no, I've got full confidence that this division will still be there for the taking when number 9 returns, if not a wild card spot. And when you have number 9 and you're in the playoffs, you have a chance.
And, Ron, let me give a little kudos to Mr. Chamberlain there. That's a nice little theory. Is this a blessing in disguise that it forces Breeze to rest that shoulder for 8 weeks and it comes back stronger and the Saints can then just go ahead and win out or win, 5 of the last 6 to walk into the playoffs with the division? Great fan theory. And I'll chew on that for a minute. That might, maybe it is a blessing in disguise.
Underdog role.
Underdog.
Maybe he did.
Yeah.
Maybe Pete
the
did
Packers
on
almost had that last year.
Going for.
Ron, we'll go to everyone on this question, but I got one.
Wait.
Sorry, go ahead, Ron.
Did y'all talk about? I mean, we talked about this with Ingram last year. Did we not? Rested legs towards the end of the year. So yeah, and I think I am going to claim this guy. I think he has some maybe fraternity ties. And George, he looks like he's buddies with Connor, who sits in front of us in the dome.
Shout out, Ron's. Ron, we got another question. Our great Ron Barrios has a question. When do we see Clickbait as a starting quarterback?
If Teddy doesn't improve week to week after the Dallas game, if you haven't seen enough from Bridgewater, then it's time for Taysom to play. But it's only fair to give Bridgewater 2 games, see how he looks, and then roll Taysom out there.
Clickbait? Stat Ron.
Yeah, I'll be clickbait. So I got to agree. I think so. I guess to clarify the question is: are we talking like starter from first quarter opening kick, or are we talking half? Like what?
Half. You can do any. Like third quarter Cowboys. Yeah.
Yeah.
First quarter Cardinals.
I'm gonna go third quarter Cowboys.
Oh yeah.
Mid-game.
I got the same one. Let me paint a picture for you, Ron. I hope you're paying attention now. So we're going to lay an egg in Seattle. The Rons are going to watch that and be so hyped up for the Sunday night game versus the Cowboys, a team Sean Payton hates to lose to. Bridgewater is going to come out looking like lackluster Bridgewater, relaxed on the bench, bad body language, and the dome will turn against him. Sean Payton will hear that, put in Clickbait, who will then rally the forces, rally the masses to a win. You heard it here first. Well, actually, you heard it here second because my boy Statron just said it. But no, that's going to be when it is. Halftime of the Cowboys game.
I'm going to be a pessimist, and I'm going to say I'm not going to get my wish this season. And I'm going to say that we don't see Taysom Hill as the Saints starting quarterback until maybe 2020 or even 2021. So, all right, on that shifting topics, Godfather's got a question. Now, we all gave our score predictions, so hopefully we can roll through this real quick, and you can tell me if the Saints are going to cover. I'm checking my ESPN app now. It looks like the Saints are a 4-point dog at this point. That would mean they are not going to cover, per my prediction. George?
Nope.
Statron?
They cover, per my prediction.
Yeah. You and Jay picked winners. Yeah. So y'all are.
Yeah.
So yes. Straight up. Okay. Next question, coming from Jack Zarang, and I'm going to spice this one up for him, but just because if I just blurt this out,
10 questions,
we might have to start actually picking them and not just reading every single one. So I'm going to spice this one up because if I just throw it out, y'all are just going to, mock me or mock this poor fan here. How bad does it have to get during this 6-week stretch for us to tank for Tua? Jay, I'll kick it to you first.
Saints are 1-1 in the 6-week stretch. If they lose 6 games, they're 1-7. They still have a playoff chance at 8-8. There's no scenario that would occur in the next 6 weeks where the Saints will go into tank mode with a 40-year-old Breeze in a limited window. I don't see a world where they'd intentionally lose games to get to it.
George, Statron, any different answer?
Fully agree.
Okay, well then I think that finally wraps up our fan questions. George, you got
Well,
any more?
I got another one.
Okay.
One. Hunter Yancey. We saw him for the Great Baldwin birthday party. I'm going to read it like I'm reading Boris's bedtime stories. We'll give it to my boy Statron because Statron, one transaction you didn't name was JT Barrett to the practice squad, which is relevant to this question.
I did. Run
Sorry.
the tape back.
Statron,
run it
I will
back.
never correct you again, my love. Here we go. Should we bring another quarterback on the roster while Drew is recovering? ? Not saying we replace Teddy, just have another guy as a safety net. What we've seen from Teddy thus far as the Saints does not give me a lot of confidence. Hunter Yancey.
Well, geez, if that isn't just a theme.
Taking his thunder. That was for
What?
Statron.
I just heard Ron. My bad. You can.
It's all
I guess
good.
just pick it up.
I mean, yeah. So honestly, I think you just have to think about other positions that a third quarterback would take roster spots up in. And I think I don't see it happening outside of having JT Barris on the practice squad. I think if anything, they would bring him up into the roster. I do know that the Saints. I would be surprised if they're already working out quarterbacks. I haven't seen any reports, but I would believe that Peyton would be doing something like that right now. But no, I think that Barrett would be the one that they would bring up if there was a possibility. But I think with where the roster stands right now, I think keeping two quarterbacks is the best way moving forward.
Rod, I think you have 2 cents you want to add.
Well, we had already talked about just the risk you put Taysom at by putting him at all these positions just creates a unique scenario where I think they had no choice but to sign another quarterback. And so, yeah, as Statron alluded to earlier in the podcast, it made sense to bring a guy like JT Barrett back. He had practiced all camp, familiar with this offense, just in that doomsday scenario. I mean, the way the offensive line is blocking right now, you can't rule anything out. And that's not a full knock on the line as much as it is you're going to have slower decision-making at quarterback. You're not going to have Hall of Fame response time in the pocket.
But, Ron, I think you're going to see clickbait used more as an offensive weapon and less, getting the ball in his hands directly. Less as a block punter, less on special teams as a kick return. Just he's going to be used a lot more in a way for Sean Payton to manufacture, generate offense. A lot of a jet sweep pass, RPOs with Kamara. And you're going to see less of the third tight end and the fourth wide receiver once we activate a third tight end / a fourth wide receiver. I think you're going to see a different clickbait until he's the starting quarterback. But I think you will see a different clickbait going forward.
I could buy that. So, okay, does that now wrap up all of our fan questions?
Yes, and now we have to get introduced and educated on week 3 for fantasy football, French Quarter Fantasy Minute.
And we're back here for our French Quarter Realty Fantasy Minute, back here with the seasoned vets, brokers of the company, George Johnson and Eric Wilkinson. This is not the point where you fast forward in the podcast. These guys have been dead on the last couple of weeks. So if you want that big pot at the end of the season of $1,200, $2,000, $3,000, whatever it is, make sure you tune in for this minute. George, what kind of advice you got this week for us?
Looking at the waiver wire, Jansen, I would say that if Frank Gore is available, I'd probably pick him up. Singletary got himself a hamstring injury in the last game, and I think the Bills are going to be very careful with him. And then another rookie I'd be talking about is Darwin Thompson. LaShawn McCoy and Damian Williams are both hurt. If he's in a non-keeper league, I think a lot of people may have drafted him, but then subsequently dropped him. So if he's out there, I'd pick him up on that high-powered offense. Receivers, I like Deebo Samuel. San Francisco's offense is on the uptick. He leads all the receivers in snaps and has become the primary option for San Fran. One other point, if you happen to be in an eliminator pool, I think the Cowboys are looking good this week. Obviously, they're playing the Dolphins. That would make me nervous. Other than that, if you've already used them and you wanted to save the Patriots, I like the Packers over the Broncos.
All right, you heard George talk about Deebo Samuel. That's a guy that we talked about in our pre-draft episode as a guy that would work well with this offense with the Saints. Look at him now, balling out for San Francisco. And Eric, what you got for us this week?
All right, Jansen, thanks, bud. All right, couple things. First off, I want to sell high and look for an opportunity here with Austin Eckler. Right now he's the number one fantasy player. We know Melvin Gordon's going to show back up to this team probably around week 8. So I want you to look at the Melvin Gordon owner, see if you can make a deal, either acquire Melvin or sell incredibly high on Austin Eckler. Look for your opportunity here. Realize that there's going to be probably a split backfield for the fantasy playoffs. So keep that on your radar. Also, who I'm buying, DJ Chark, 4 for 146 and a touchdown week 1, 7 for 55 and a touchdown week 2. You guys remember him from LSU. The guy got some good hands, and Gardner Minshew's loving him. All right, guys, I'm buying low on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Everybody's probably looking to unload Juju, Vance McDonald, guys like that, James Conner even. They believe in Mason Rudolph over there. They just got rid of their first-round pick to acquire Minkah Fitzpatrick. It's not a team that's going to tank. There's going to be a lot of fantasy players out there that are selling their Pittsburgh Steelers. It might be a really good time to buy low. This is the kind of opportunity you want. Buy at the low market, sell high. That's it, Jay.
All right. These guys know a lot about Creole cottages and duplexes, but obviously they know their fantasy too. So make sure you tune in every week to get the advice from George and Eric. That's your French Quarter Realty Fantasy 4 minutes here on Pro Saints Talk.
Okay, well, no lie, I am strictly adhering to the fantasy advice this week because I'm officially 0-2 in the Pro Uptown Talk League. Props to Grammy for pulling out the victory on Monday night. Stat Ron, let's get into the stat corrections. What you got tonight?
So, Ron, you had a question about the last time the Saints beat the Seahawks in Seattle. That happened in 2007. The Saints beat the Seahawks in Week 6. And I just want to read this. It was funny looking at the box score. The leading receiver for the Saints on that day, David Patton, with 8 receptions.
I knew you were going to say
for
that.
113 yards.
Hey, I swear to God, I don't have a computer.
17.
Statron, I swear to God, I don't have a computer in front of me. Deuce had 99 rushing yards that game, didn't he?
Reggie Bush had 97. Deuce was not around. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, Deuce in 07? Are you kidding me right now?
I remember a game where he was talking a lot of Norman Hand went to Seattle and said, Deuce will not have 100 yards on us. And he was right because Deuce only had 99. But that was way before 07. Forgive me.
Continue, Stat Ron.
Didn't have any for Jorge, but that also, you didn't really adhere to your not yelling and screaming promise in the beginning, because there's sometimes where I just can't correct you when you're just screaming at me. So
I'm sorry. Sorry to my mom who told me I need to stop yelling, and I really was cognizant of this going forward. But I just got emotional about clickbait. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Literally, the next segment, he comes out shouting louder than he ever has before.
Yeah, coming in hot. And then just a ticky-tack, but Jay, you mentioned Brandon Cooks had a 1-yard touchdown pass. It was actually a 2-yard touchdown pass. So those are the corrections. Got him.
All right. Well, look, honestly, this could have gone a lot worse for me emotionally. I still give a lot of props to Dr. Simo for putting me in a better place. I think he put us all in a better place. We hope all the fans appreciate that kind of analysis that you get on this podcast. And we hope that you're still with us. As we said in the intro, all is not lost. We hope you're all in still, emotionally, fiscally. However you're all in, stay all in, because this season ain't over. Jay, closing thoughts before we tie a bow on this one.
Yeah, I think George put it well when he said that it's never as good as you think. You know, after that happened and seeing Breeze's face, it looked to me like he was going to be out the year. So honestly, to hear that he's out 6 to 8 weeks is refreshing news. And as George has pointed out so often on this podcast, he believes vehemently that this is Breeze's last year. Okay, if this is Breeze's last year, who's next? And this is a sample size of what's to come without Breeze. So may not be ready for it in week 3 of 2019, but that's what we're going to get. So buckle up and let's see what we're going to get here. And I think it's going to be better than we all think.
Stat Ron, anything you want to tell the public before we sign off?
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to being out in Seattle and being at this game. I'll make sure to get some sort of some good content from the ground at CenturyLink and
Pacific NOLA West.
Yeah, Pacific NOLA West, Pro Saints
love
Talk.
that.
All the Rons are coming out hard. I'm looking for an MVP performance from Ron Crane this weekend. So,
Bruh, love how many Rons we got following this podcast now. George, what you got for us?
Titus Howard is a tackle. I repeat, Titus Howard is a tackle.
Oh, man, just can't let it go. That's why we have you, Stat Ron, because you ruffle my man's feathers. All right, y'all, stick with us. Let's get a W this week. I don't care how. Let's find a way. Do it for Breeze. Pro Saints Talk, we out here.
No time to be crying for mama now. It's the movement. Come on. To all my people on them corners, acting serious dogs. I wish I could break a package down and send it to y'all. I know you're feeling me behind them penitentiary walls. Put me on a busy list and I'll be in to see y'all. Talk to him. Your mayor ain't your friend, he's an enemy. Just to get your